right, so this is gonna be your legal talk. So get your beer, get your coffee, anything you need. I promise I'll try not to bore you, but this is one of the important stuff when we're dealing with security because the legal aspect of it is the backbone. All right, well, this is me. I'm an analyst. I say analyst because I wear different hats. Sometimes a security analyst, sometimes I work with a lot of data, and basically you throw something at me, I'm always there to handle it. And mostly because anything with the US customers, I'm the rep here. And they expect that I also work as like a cultural translator. So, yes, I'm an analyst. Data, I like to work with a lot of data. My favorite projects probably is like Six Sigma projects that I enjoy working with. And I honestly believe a lot of things can be solved with data. If you know how to utilize it, if you know how to implement improvements and all of that. And one thing that stuck with me, like where one of our trainers said in the data, said like, in God we trust, the rest bring data. Which is like, yes, you need to bring data so that we will be on the same page. I like to DIY a lot of things. I also break a lot of things. And I actually went to Minnesota State. Okay, so what is data to you? I'm gonna take you down to basics. We're starting from ground zero. So a lot of people, when we talk about data, they always think like what's on their computer, or what's on their phones. But it can be like, family pictures, the ones you print, what grandma has. That is also considered data. And also your locations, pretty much, right? I mean, a lot of people here are like techie, so I will try not to spend a lot of time on that. What I usually get is that, when people say like locations, okay, you can turn off your phone data and then you may not be tracked. No, that's not true. Just because you don't see the data, it doesn't mean that it's not logged in or someone else is able to track your movements and all of that. So if you go back to Google, like they have like years of your location data. Put a do not track me, don't do that. I mean, it doesn't work. They log it regardless. Your cars, wearable devices, pretty much anything that logs in, it's collecting data on you. And sometimes it's good to be reminded that we're constantly volunteering data. I mean, I don't understand why a company-sponsored health app needs to know what my blood pressure is. Why? They don't need to, so it's always good to be reminded what information you're giving and what can be logged about you. All right, so why do companies collect or buy your data? Long story short, like to money. They will make money out of you. They will profit just from selling your data. There are like a lot of bots and apps that collect data, combine it, sell it. And maybe $1, $2 from them, but it's free money, right? They predict consumers' needs. That's like marketing 101. If you know what your customer needs, you actually could succeed. And then they do like targeted advertisements, which I am not a fan of. Just because like I'm looking for whatever, like dog food, on Amazon, the next thing I know, like everything I look at involves that dog food. And they try to suggest like, oh, try this or try that. So it's pretty much annoying. But that's the reality we live in. We live in a data world. All right, so now we know that our data, like so security and privacy. Just because your data is secure, it doesn't mean that it's private. So think of it this way. Say, like imagine a window, open window. You can still see inside, so that's not safe. I mean, it's not secure because you can just jump in, and then you can actually see what's inside, right? So mind that just because your data is secure, it does not mean that it's private. So now imagine a closed window, but with blinds. Secure, not secure, maybe not, because you could easily break the window, but at least it's somewhat private, and then you will not be able to see inside. So you kind of just got the idea. A lot of people think that, just because your data is secure, it does not mean their privacy is secured and their data is fine, which in reality, it is not. All right. So we all know most, corporations are willing to do anything to get our data, as long as it profits to them. But what is the government doing about it? What do they have? So we'll look at the value of our data in the United States versus European Union. So let's start at home. So what we have here is like there is no comprehensive federal law, but each term Congress brings protocols and standards law. They try to they come in with bills like, hey, this is what we're trying to do. It usually gets nowhere, to be honest. That's the reality here in the U.S. But we do have few privacy-related laws that requires a person, data, and healthcare, finance. I'll just go over it in a little bit. And what else we have is hey, best practices. That's my favorite. When companies try to regulate themselves. Yeah, that means nothing. Not at all. And then we do have a good of them. If a company actually proactively follows through that, we have the NITs, we have the ISOs, and they're good. But without enforcement, that doesn't work. You can tell a kid hey, there's your cookie, you'll eat it after dinner. But unless you're there to regulate it, the kid would eat the cookie before dinner, and that's how we are. So these are the ones the FTC. Its principal mission is to promote of consumer protection and eliminate prevention of corporate monopoly. Sure. So we have that. We also have, one thing I like about the FTC, it also the primary enforcer of the COBA. COBA is the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. So they try to limit what they can collect about kids, and then try to do prevent it from advertisers to do behavioral advertisers. We can handle it. Kids brought up these days, 5-year-olds, they're no protection, still in a bubble. This could actually affect them. And then actually there's a research in Coca-Cola kindergarten, all their seats were Coca-Cola branded. And when they're asked about their marketing team, they said that children recognize brands as early as 1-year-old. So we're not enough. They're going after the next generation, which is, if you look at it from a business point of view, it's smart. It's clever. But at what cost? And there's the health one, the HIPAA, the federal law that sets national standards and protects our medical records and other personal health information. We've all been to the hospital or clinic. At the end of the day, we're given one sheet of paper. Who reads that? Has anyone read that? They just basically tells you, this is what we are required to give you, and they are required to give you information, but honestly, none of us reads it. It's like the terms and conditions, we just click and move on to the next one. So there are some, but culturally in the US, we don't really actively follow up. And then the other one is the Fair Credit Reporting Act. In a nutshell, this actually acts as and promotes fairness, privacy of consumer information obtained in files of consumers reporting agencies. What I gather from this is that they gather your data, but they tell you where it is and what they're doing with this. Mostly banks, loan officers, and all of that. So that's the US. These are a few of them. I'm sure there are many more, but yeah, they've been around, and I kind of didn't want to go all through it because it would take days. So, what about in our neighboring Europe? What's going on there? Okay, there are many rules when it comes to Europe. The first one, this is where it gets very interesting. Personal data can only be processed in certain situations. The first one, you need to consent. They basically could not do anything without you saying that, yes, take my data. So this is what happened. I'm a big fan of VPN. So I wanted to see this for myself. I've always heard about it. So I changed my VPN to UK, just UK Hampton, just to see what goes on. I went to Twitter. Twitter is constantly telling me, we refreshed the page, constantly telling me that they're collecting cookies and what that means, and then says a data transfer outside of the EU. So just because I was accessing their servers through an EU VPN, I was getting all this information. For me, it kind of gives me some sort of protection, even if they don't know that I'm not in EU. My best part, cookies. It asked me if I can refuse cookies. Has anyone ever got that? I refused the cookie. I'm no. If I can prevent it, no. And most of the EU websites, they tell you that. They either tell you, if they will ask you if you can refuse cookie, or they tell you. But basically, in Twitter's case, it's take it or leave it type of situation. I think in the US they do that too, but they don't constantly pop it up whenever you log into the website. Another one here are like the few other circumstances that any agent can collect personal data. And this is by like ways of applying to any servers that are hosted in the US. You access any server hosted in the US, this data applies. And then this is not just about, it applies both for like government and private sector as well. So first one is obvious, like, job application and loans. You have to give up your data, and then you basically have to consent, or else you won't get the job or the loan. That's pretty straightforward. The legal obligations, I took it as like, police stations, national ID request. Again, you have to give up that data, which is fine. I mean, we gave that data too. You can't just hoard your data and then nothing would happen to it. Another one is like if the process is in your vital interest. From what I understood, this means that, for example, you are in an accident and they need to identify who you are, they are able to collect your fingerprints. So it's going to help you, or like any dental cases, so all of that. Another one is like, public interest and the government interest. I mean, that can go a long way. That can get misinterpreted. There are ways to manipulate this and then find a loophole, but at least it's there. It's more than what we have here, and they're making progress with that. And what about processing your personal data? Well, it can't be processed unless it's for a legitimate purpose. Just because there's a cookie and then they want to sell my data, they can't process it. No, it's not allowed. Can't be excess, which is good. I mean, there's a way to stop them. They're not constantly getting your data. And this is my favorite, the personal data has time frame. If you no longer need it, you can't keep it. I mean, in a way, like, it kind of frees up company storage, so they should admire that. But I know like some companies like Comcast and any other company you no longer with, they still have your data. They still know more about you, which is kind of frightening. So if you're going to like between AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, by the time you make your loop, everybody knows about you and they know how you utilize your data. So if they're allowed, they can probably manipulate the pricing based on you. I'm sure they would call it customization, but that's the truth. You're also able to correct, remove, or block incorrect data. I mean, this is something similar to what we have. I'm not entirely sure what it would cost you. But for example, my name, I have like 5 different names on my credit reports. If I can correct it, I would, but I don't know what it would cost me, so I'm just like leaving it there. And any data breach must be reported to the National Data Protection Authority. That's like a requirement. I'm sure US has something similar, but it's not written as like that. You have to report, and they have to take the necessary requirements to stop that. All right, what about electronics and or computers, anything electronic data like they can collect? Well, they can't no tapping or listening into without your consent. It all goes with like, without our consent, this and that, but I'm sure there are ways that they can get consent. Data must be erased or made anonymous when no longer in use. This is my favorite so far. I mean, they don't need it, they can't keep it. No spam emails without a consent. I mean, honestly, who would consent to a spam email? I mean, I don't mind getting spam email. I mean, honestly though. I mean, I don't mind getting spam emails because there's like a designated folder for it, but what I hate is like when I get promotional calls. They tell me, like, the other day, I got a call that said, like, oh, I want a cruise. I'm like, okay. I sometimes just let it go on just to see where it goes. And then immediately after that, they were asking me about my credit. Oh, can we run your credit? I'm like, oh, hell no. No, you can't. And there's a lot of that. And then obviously no yellow pages, no listing of phone numbers on public directories. It's awesome. These days in the US, you type anything. All I need is like your first and last name. A lot of information about you would pop up. Take me, for example. So I'm the only Naomi Asfaw in Indiana, I think. So you'll be able to Google a whole lot of me. But it would be like shocking, and if there's more like public directories, if it's actually posted. So in some ways, Europe protects its citizens. Okay, now we're talked about like how there are data, different rules, different countries. Now, when we're trying to do businesses in different other countries, how does that affect you? Because globally, I mean, you think that you're sending an email, it goes to a different country, that's it, right? No, it's not. There are a lot of requirements, there are a lot of data residency that is happening. So let's look at what data residency is. That's like where the physical location of your organization data is. I can be here, like take me for my example, like my job. All the servers and everything I accessed are out of US. They're in Ethiopia. So technically, my data residency, like what I work with, is in Ethiopia. And so how does this affect small businesses, right? I'll give you a scenario. So meet Jane and Beth. Oh, well, James and Beth. So they are proud owners of like a Software X, and they're actually, let's just say like they're operating out of Columbus, Indiana, just because I drove all the way from there. Let's just say that their business is I would say they verify addresses of customers and vendors, like data cleansing. And let's say that they have clients all over the world and business is going great because, again, they can host their like information and their data like in another country. Let's say that, and then cool. Which this allows them to compete with bigger companies, right? Because they're doing everything the down low and the cheap. Okay, good for them. They're making progress. So what happens is that like there's a new law. Like to say the government has determined that the cross-border data is insecure and they want all their servers to be hosted locally. What does this mean? Now everything is going to be expensive. They can't compete with big companies. They go out of business. They go out of business just like that. These days, it's so easy to sit at home and start like a startup company, all on e-commerce. But if the government gets up and like, hey, you need to host locally, that's not going to happen. I mean, forget their hosts, like just to say email. Let's just say that they are not using Outlook and they're using some, I would just say like a German company email, right? So those servers, their data, their email isn't actually in Germany. So for us, it's kind of easy to, you won't even notice it. It comes to your phone, it goes out of your phone, your email, right? So it goes from their phone to the cloud to Germany and come back. So now they're cutting that off. The government is saying like, nope, anything, data that comes out of this country needs to be locally. Now they are forced to go with Outlook or any other major big company that's monopolizing the market. So out of business, and then that's the truth here, and I'm just really hoping that this doesn't happen because a lot of small businesses would go under. And I'm sure the big companies would like it because it means less competition for them. And they're too big to fail, so like they wouldn't even mind paying like an extra million or two to support this. Okay, what about, so there's always like a public and the private sector that's always going on, like why can't they work together, right? Well, they can't play nice with security, like there's a lot of things, but why? So this is actually from a World Economic Forum that like this is what they came up with. They do like a lot of searches. So the first one is like what the private should understand about the public sector is that it is important for the private sector to keep in mind that any single government or agency can be playing one or more roles in the cybersecurity system. Because government can be a defendant, like the government can be a user, the government can be a regulator. And then this obviously has conflicts. It's just that they just need to understand. And with international fragmentation, which like there are different countries, it's hard to make an effective investigation and prosecution. It's very hard. Imagine like, you have like 50 countries with all their different laws. How do you put them together and work with the private sector? It is actually still a challenge. I know this World Economic Forum, it's from 2014, 8 years old, but still, it's one of the things we haven't been able to work around because everybody wants to put their interests first. Another one is like developing international norm and settings. Not a priority to most countries. Earlier, we were just talking about like what the African Union was hacked. What was it, like the Chinese? Yeah. And then they noticed that like their system like at midnight that was going on and all of that. I I can tell you that African Union is located in Ethiopia. I can tell you that security is not their concern at all. Not at all. Not at all. And then why? Because like most developing countries will not get affected like the developed countries. Here, everything is on the cloud. One loses, everybody loses. Back in Ethiopia, we're still like using paper and all of that. Sometimes it's a blessing in disguise because you will not get hacked. Because in countries like Ethiopia, you can't get to the physical location of it. It's militarized. Honestly, you'll get shot and nobody will look around. So nobody dares to try. And there's like one of like a differences, like political and cultural differences that's out there. And another thing is like the public sector faces difficult challenges of balancing the need across information or investigative parties. Government, like just like the case of FBI versus like the Apple. Do they go investigate or do they actually hold on, respect the person's rights? So there's always going to be this type of like bumping and challenges with the private sectors. Like Apple, for example, they wanted to ensure their customers like, hey, no FBI, no government will come to us. Why they're doing that? It's marketing strategy too. They will get more people, confidence, you build your confidence in that brand, and then you move towards that brand. So there's always going to be a bump, and also like the fact that's the privacy rights. What about the public sector? What should they know about the private sectors? The private sector often fails to adequately address cybersecurity, not because of lack of solutions. Money. If anyone has worked at corporate, they would just accept their risk and move on because nobody wants to spend money on cybersecurity. Maybe these days there are actually a lot of hacks like Anthem and all of that, and maybe they think that it's better to hire people and address this than pay the fines, but yeah, when it comes to money versus security, they will mitigate their risk and then they'll just move on. And the second part is resources. Not a lot of resources are out there in information security. It's a new field that they say there are a lot of interests, like growing interest, but as of right now, there are not a lot of resources. And the Sony 2014 hack, guys remember that? It's way back, but yeah. Kind of shows a whole lot because out of the company's 7,000 employees, only 11 were assigned to the company's information security. So this says a lot. It's 4 years ago, but still, we're facing the same issues. You all work for the company. How many of your resources are allocated for information security? Usually, it is just thrown under IT, and then you deal with it. But where I work, information security compliance is right next to IT. It's where legal is. So IT does not really detect about security. It's legal because the legal issues are becoming real, and they're hard to ignore. Another thing, the challenge. It actually takes a village to release the security updates. Or any software release, for example. One person does not do that. So turning around the government dictating hey, Apple, you have a patch it, that does not work overnight. There are a lot of different business units and budget needs to be approved and you have to go through the development, you have to test it, and it can't be done overnight. There are a lot of, steps. And then that's another thing, pushing Android updates. How many times your cell phone, it has to go through your cell phone, and then you're forced multiple times to update and it goes on. So this kind of tells us that the public should understand that the private sector is not all happy. Sure, they have more money to spend, but most of the time it does not work like that. We have to be realistic here when we're approaching cybersecurity because we're trying to build a backbone here and then have something that would roll over without having to make any more changes. All right, what are the global challenges on standards, regulations, and enforcements? Again, when I say global, I'm looking at the whole world. What can we do? Because Chinese can sit there and hack ass, right? It's the reality. You don't have to be physically in China to communicate with China or Germany to communicate with Germany. These days, it's very easy to do it over the internet. So the first one is lack of awareness. This mostly government and private sectors, they use old standards and they're not willing to change. Maybe they're not informed. Maybe they don't have the budget in place. I'll go back to like refer budget a lot because that's where it is. If you don't spend money on this, you can't get rid of it. Another one is like corporate culture. They're like some big companies. They're too big to fail. So what they want is like the others to adopt their culture. And hey, they already have a culture going on. Why can't the small ones come and join them? So there's a lot of like bumps over there. The second one is the constant growth and complexity of information security attacks. Honestly, they don't know where to begin. You're trying to address one issue, and you hear like like a company that's very similar to you is getting hacked. I mean, for me, honestly, I think this is not a software issue. It's about building policies and standards and enforcing them. And the other one is economy consideration. Again, budget. Because these companies, they have to answer to shareholders, not just bottom line profits. And as we all know, if they're not bringing enough money, shareholders would flee. And then that means that their business can go down. All right, so what are the other projects, like, what's there to address these? There are a lot of initiative globally that's going on, mostly by EU sponsors. So my favorite is like, Project 2020. And I'll try not to bore you and read all of this, but what Project 2020 is an initiative of international private security. What they do is that, it was launched in 2012, mind you. It's very old. When you think about the dates these days, we look at the dates and we immediately ignore it. But not in this case, because we're still having the problems. So this Project 2020 was launched in 2012 with an aim to anticipate the future of cybercrime, enabling government, business, and citizens to prepare themselves for the challenges and opportunities of the coming decade. Think of it as the Hawaiian alarm that went off. Think of it like that. So they would anticipate what goes on so like people can actually be better prepared. And so what did they come up with? They said implications for cybersecurity. Why do I think that's my phone? Honestly. I had a dream, like, my battery would die. Like, I fixed that, and the next thing I know, my phone is going up. I'm like, oh. Anyways, so these projects, I swear to God, I'm not making this up. I'm not making this up. So what else? They kind of anticipated like cyber threats, and then you know what? They're dead on. What's going on? They're dead on. And they actually also review like a lot of internet security industry reporting, just like the Verizon, the one the Verizon report has. But these ones that actually, anticipated and then actually forced the EU government to do something about it. Here's like a little video. Oh, it's not gonna work, is it? Oh, bummer. It's a YouTube video. It's like a 3-minute scenario of what 2020 will look like. I'm trying to see. Of course, it wouldn't work. Okay, we'll go back to it if we have time at the end. And also, like another one is the World Economic Forum. I like this one because what they actually set out to do would happen because they have a lot of ears in the EU and they're located in Geneva, Switzerland. Because we all know Geneva is like a neutral zone, and they have a lot of acceptance, and they constantly rolling out initiatives which EU takes seriously. I mean, I know we have Congress bills coming up every term, but they don't get tucked around. These type of things actually get, they actually have actions on them. And if you have the chance, I recommend reading it. There's the link right down here. It usually goes over what the challenges are and how they could fix it, and then it gives a lot of example. So you can be like, hey, that won't happen, but they tell you hey, it happened to Sony, it happened to Google, it happened to Anthem. So it kind of, gets you going. And yes, it's this same thing. They have multiple initiatives. That's what it just talks about. All right, that's it. I want to try to play the video. That way you guys be able to... really? Of course this would happen. Because it's really interesting. Maybe you have seen it, but I'm going to do... What is it? Oh, internet.
hooked to the projector.
Is it? Oh, I think it's because I'm not connected to the internet. I'll try to do it real quick so that you guys can see it because I thought it was really awesome.
Do you need the internet Wi-Fi password?
Yeah, I think it was right here, right?
Yeah. Go back.
Okay, you type it because I.
Okay. Yeah. It's what's the password? 6.
It's
Caret.
Caret.
Oh, yeah, right.
789. Dash caret 789.
Wait.
Capital
Launch. Got it.
Dash caret 789.
Is it working? Is it working?
And then you have to say Paul is dead backwards 3 times.
We got it.
Oh, we got it. Did we? Oh, yeah, it's connected.
All right. There's no dead chickens needed, right? We don't need to wave them overhead. Dead chicken waving?
Of course.
Ceremonial
Go back.
sacrifice?
Oh, God. No. We're not doing this here. Go away. Of course this would happen. We don't have volume, do we?
I don't know if you can turn your volume up. On your computer.
It's trying to. Oh, man. No, don't watch it yet. No, hold on. It gets better with volume. What am I
You're
doing?
muted.
It's not working. Oh, there you go.
Oh, you know what? It's coming out of the HDMI.
Ah.
It may have to come out of your speakers. No. Just go to your sound preferences.
Where? Here.
Click the little sound.
This one? It's
Yeah.
energy, like, does not sound.
Fire the AV guy.
I know, he's terrible.
Where's the tech?
Invisible tiger mind.
What's that? Because it's coming out. Can you click that? That allow you to choose
Speakers, yeah.
speakers. Now try. Oh, its volume's all the way down.
We can fix
Oh, look at
that. Yay! In-house, tech.
Now if we play it, I'll hold the mic over here. Then we can hear it.
Shop, and even work from home and on the move. Things that were unthinkable 10 years ago.
I don't know where it's
In the
going.
next few years, things are going to change even more. We'll be able to connect with each other and technology like never before. Welcome to the year 2020, where the day is just about to begin. Meet Kineko. Wearing visual display glasses is now totally normal. Everybody Kineko's age is doing it. Her display interacts and targets her interests and needs. She can choose what she wants to see and what she doesn't. Kineko finds tools like this really convenient and useful. Now she's checking in with her granddad. Felix is 94, lives on his own, and is one of many people who now benefit from technology-assisted living. Kineko can keep an eye on him without feeling like she's interfering. All sorts of medical information are readily available, including his location. Despite the clear benefits of using these technologies, Kineko sometimes has concerns. What happens if someone hacks into her granddad's medical devices, or the big data centers, or her shopping list? Personalized advertising is another part of everyday life in 2020, one which Kineko loves. She especially likes the fact that no one else sees what she's into. Sometimes, however, she wonders if she's missing out on trying new things, although she can still pop into an offline shop to have a look. Made it. There's no getting lost in 2020. Let's give Kineko a little time to figure out what she wants. Even though she has a detailed shopping list on her display, you and I know that you don't always stick to your list. In 2020, there are also new ways of making money. Kineko sells data about her interests, behavior, and even moods, which are then used to develop commercial products advertising. Not everyone feels comfortable about this. Since Kineko had her bank account hacked a couple of years ago, she's become a lot more security savvy. She also pays a special company to protect her and her granddad from identity theft. Kineko runs a business designing children's toys with a group of friends. They manage the whole business in the cloud. It's not full-time, but these days, that seems to be the trend. Kinoko is still hard at work, but this time she's on her barter network, where she and other users can trade their skills and knowledge. She's trading her guitar skills for technical help with her designs. Kinoko's been busy. Now all the data she generates is being used to create a match on the new dating service she signed up for. Kinoko's story is one of millions for 2020. Millions like yours and mine. How will you use technology in your everyday life? And how will you stay safe doing it? It's totally up to you.
So this is one of the many videos they have. It's just that this is one of... And sure, we're not there yet, but... hold on, let me just pause this. We're not there yet, but you can see where it's going. For example, we have like the Amazon, like groceries at the... Like, have you guys heard about that, where you can just walk into Amazon? So it's somewhat similar. It may not be the exact same form, but they kind of captured where things might be going. And having this type of like data, like videos, it kind of makes you think, right? So it's like Kiniko, like she start looking at her bank record after being, after being hacked and all of that. So this at the back of your mind would drill something. Oh, is this going to be like this? How are we going to protect this and all of that? And I think they're doing an awesome job. We may not be like fully like that in 2020, maybe in 2025, but they've got the right idea. All right.
We have one question, which is the EU protecting genetic data as personal data?
That's interesting. I guess I would say I don't know, but if I have to guess, that is considered like a personal data, right? They can't take your fingerprint without you, without consent. So I would assume the same. But I've heard this disturbing story, like one of those like ancestors. What is it? Is it Ancestry? Or you just... Yeah.
23andMe and Ancestry.com.
Yeah, you give them your DNA and they tell you like where you are from. They give you a geographic location. Apparently after you die, they own your DNA. Which is, I'm like...
Already selling all that data anyways.
Yeah, but the fact that they can clone me and then I'm not me, but they own me, it's... So don't do it. I was very tempted to do it. I'm like, nope, it's okay. I don't need to know that. Yeah.
All right, any other questions? If anyone puts it on the Slido, or feel free to shout it out too.
Yeah. And also, like, one thing I want to add is like genetic data is like pretty new. I mean, at least it's surfacing up now. I have a feeling they've been doing a whole lot of, things behind the curtain, but it's coming up now. They're telling us, hey, we're able to clone this and that. So I will not be surprised if I see it on one of the EU's initiatives going forward.
Excellent. Well, let's give Naomi a big round of applause. Thank you very much for coming out.
Thank you.